it's Rochelle. So today on Rochelle's Creations, I'm going to show you how you can make some cinnamon raisin swirl bread. And it is a yeast bread, so if you've never made a yeast bread, you're probably going to want to try this because it's pretty delicious and amazing. And a lot of people say that yeast breads take all day to make and they're not worth it making it yourself, and it's this crazy big long thing. And that's not true at all, because it only takes about 2 hours, maybe 3 hours, depending on where you live and how much time you do other things. But it really doesn't take all day. It only takes 2 or 3 hours, like I said. And that is kind of a good amount of time, but it's not as much as people say that it takes. So I recommend that you try this, and if you've never made one before, just keep a couple of things in mind. For the first thing, the liquid that you're going to put the yeast in, it has to be the right temperature, so you want to make sure that it is not too hot or too cold, and I'll show you a little bit about that when I get more into it. And so you don't want it too hot because it'll kill the yeast, and you don't want it too cold because it won't grow. So that is probably the hardest thing that I think that's just the hardest thing, is getting it the right temperature. And as far as the rising goes, sorry, I had to think of the different things for this recipe, but as far as the rising goes, I rise it 3 times, twice in the bowl and once in the pan where I live, because it just gives it a better fluffy texture. But you may not have to do that where you live, and like I said, I'll get more into that later. And that's pretty much it. I'll just show you how you can make it, and don't be afraid by yeast breads because they're not really as hard as people say they are, and this is really delicious. So I hope you guys enjoy. I'm sorry I was a little distracted, but I have this amazing plant that we got. I thought I'd show it to you. Look at this. Isn't this amazing? It's like, it's so cool. I'm sorry to distract you guys from the bread, but I really like this plant. Yeah, so that's why I was a little distracted. Anyway, so let's get to making this bread, and I will show you what you have to do.
A cup of coffee in the morning, and I get the paper. I check the headlines and decide that I am bored. I check my email and I decide to answer later. Another cup of coffee and I drag myself to work. My life is grounded in a firm routine of coffee, sleep, and work. I am not boring, I just stick to what I know.
Heated up a little bit of water. You're aiming for like 100 degrees or so. I just put it in the microwave for about 50 seconds, and I heated up a little bit of this almond milk for about 40 seconds, and you want to make sure that it's not like boiling hot or anything, but it's a little bit hot. It'll cool down a little bit in the process, so it's okay if it's kind of hot. We're just going to add a little bit of salt here. About a teaspoon, couple teaspoons. And then I'm going to take some golden agave, put a couple tablespoons of that in there. Drippy drip. Just because this is a little bit of a sweeter bread. You don't have to put it if you don't want to. Okay. Kind of mix that. Okay. That's pretty good. So now I'm going to add this whole yeast packet here. Make sure it's opened. Okay, so I poured in the yeast into the mixture, and this is quick active rise yeast, so it's going to start working pretty quickly. It's going to get kind of foamy. It's okay, that's what we want. leave that there. I'm going to start adding the flour. Now I'm going to start to add the flour, and I'm just using a little bit of this white all-purpose flour, wheat flour, and then I'm going to use a little bit of this millet flour just to add kind of a nice texture. So don't use just gluten-free flour for this because it won't work, because the yeast eats off the gluten, if you didn't know that. So yes, I'm going to start adding in the flour, about half a cup to a cup at a time, so I can get it out of here. Start adding it in. Just kind of stir it up, adding a little bit of flour at a time. Some of this one. And a little more of this one. And all you're going to do is just stir this up until it's a dough-like consistency. Obviously I have to add more flour, but I'm going to put in a little bit of cinnamon here, because it's a cinnamon swirl bread. Yes. Alright, so I'm going to add a few more cups of flour and I'll show you what it looks like. This is what it looks like once I've added all the flour, and it's like this dough here. So now I'm going to plop it out on a floured work surface and knead it for a little bit. Okay, so I have it on this work surface here. See how nice and soft and stretchy it is? That's exactly what we want. Just put a little bit of flour on top of this. And if your dough is warm, that is a telltale sign that your yeast has been activated and it's working nicely. So, you know, just treat it with love. You kind of don't have to worry about over kneading it in this first step. Just kind of do this, you know, put your hands into it. Also, you want to make sure that you take off any of your rings or bracelets, because I've been down that road and it is ridiculous trying to get off like rings and stuff that have dough all over them. And it can be very irritating. I'm going to put a little bit more of this millet flour here. I've never used millet flour before, so I hope that works out pretty good. You can fold it in half and press it with your wrists, like that. And it's kind of fun, you know? You just kind of do it, you know? Like that. And I stirred it up quite a bit in the bowl, so this doesn't have to be kneaded a whole lot. But you're just kind of, you know, putting it together and all of that great stuff. So it's nice and elastic. And I'm just kind of talking, but it's okay. See how it's kind of sticky? It needs a little bit more flour. Okey-dokey. This is so great because it's that. The camera's battery died, but I was going to say that this bread is really nice because it's raining out and it's a little bit chilly for being the 1st of August, so it will be nice. But anyway, I just put the dough, rolled it up into a ball, and stuck it back in this bowl, and I'm just going to put this towel over it and just let it sit there until it doubles in size. You can put saran wrap over it, put a little oil on the saran wrap, anything really, and just kind of leave it there until it rises eventually. But where I'm at, it rises pretty quickly, so I don't really have to worry because it's high altitude. So I will show you guys when it has risen to amazingness. It's been rising for about 30 minutes. You just want to let it rise until it's about doubled in size, like so. If you poke it, it should eventually pop out and it'll feel very airy. So I'm just going to dump this onto the floured work surface again press out the bubbles, let it knead a little bit, just knead it a couple times, then put it back in the bowl to rise again. As I mentioned, I would let it rise again before I started the video. Press out the air bubbles. Do a little more flour on your work surface. Wow, this is really elasticy. Alright. Wow, this is a really nice dough. Yeah. Alright. You don't have to knead it that much. Not as much as the first time. Just a little bit. Then we're going to roll it into a ball again, put it back in the pan, and let it double again. A little bit more of the filling, just a little bit more, and I'm going to top it with a little cinnamon and a tiny bit more of this Cabino sugar. It's kind of up to you and your personal preference. Okay, now let's roll this little guy. Okay, so what you want to do is just simply roll it up. And let's see, you can either roll it this way, going that way, or you can roll it this way. And I'm trying to look at my pan, and I think it will be good to roll it this way. Okay. Sorry, I had a moment there. And you're just going to roll this little guy up like a jelly roll. Because it kind of is a jelly roll. And it's okay if it oozes a little bit, that's fine. And then when we get to the end here, just going to pinch it shut. In fact, let's flip it on its back. Make sure it's nice and sealed. Ooh, this is really juicy. Okay. So just pinch it like that. Pinch it up. Just so it doesn't go crazy. Okay. And you guys couldn't see that, but all I did was just kind of pinch it up. It's gonna look a little messy, but that's okay. We don't mind. Okay. And this pan here is a, what is this? 9 by 5 inch. And I'm just going to carefully put this little guy in, the pinch side down. Wow, that fits quite nicely. Look at that. Oh yeah. Cool. Sorry, the last time I made this, it was way too small, but this is good. Good. Okay. So we're just going to leave that to rise. and I'll show you when that's done. So I forgot to show you what it looked like when it finished rising in the pan. It's actually already in the oven. See there? So I just set the oven at 375. You don't really have to preheat it. You can just kind of stick it in there because it'll help it to rise a little bit more and it'll be good. So yes, that's gonna bake for 30-40 minutes until it's pretty much done. I'm not sure exactly how long that's going to be. You can see my feet there. So I will show you guys when that's done. So it was in the oven for about 30 or 40 minutes and it got kind of brown, and you'll know when it's done if you tap on it and it sounds pretty hollow, and also when it starts to kind of rip apart there. See that? All around there. Some of the cinnamon like oozed around. It looks really good. You want to let it cool in the pan for a little bit and then put it on a rack. Don't cut into it right away because it needs to rest a little bit and just finish the last bit of cooking and all of that. So that is pretty much it, and I will show you what it looks like when you cut it up. It's cooling for a little bit and I cut it open, and as you can see, it's like a swirly cinnamon rolly thing. Yeah, pretty impressed with it, and it's very tasty. So I hope you guys give this a shot, and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.